Which team coverage tonight is dedicated to that very issue and to look at whether Kenya is a democracy. Olive Burrows starts us off.
Thank you, Mark. And that's actually my task tonight. A very simple question. Is Kenya a democratic state? Going by the definition you gave us at the start of the bulletin, simply put, a democracy is a system of government where the majority have their way, but the minority have their say. Is that an accurate definition? And is it the African way or a Western concept forced down our throats? Let's find out. The preamble of Kenya's constitution reads, "We the people," recognizing the aspirations of all Kenyans for a government based on the essential values of human rights, equality, freedom, democracy, social justice, and the rule of law. But what is democracy? Is it a foreign concept imposed on the rest of the world by the West, and is it one size fits all?
The basic requirement of democracy is that you are governed on the basis of your consent and that you tolerate the views of others. Even in traditional African societies, there was a lot of tolerance. That is why there were meetings. People say in Africa, people met under a tree and then they discussed until they agreed. The discussion implies that there will be differences of opinion. And if African societies were discussing things until they reached a consensus, then really we are saying they recognize the fact that tolerance was important.
The Africans have always been democratic. If you look at, for example, where I come from, that's Meru, Kikuyu. We had what in Meru they call the Tueka. That means a generation was 15 years. After the 15th year, that entire generation surrenders all positions of leadership to the younger generation. That was a democracy.
Given this understanding, then, what is the state of democracy in Kenya? As explained by the United Nations, Tuesday's commemoration of the International Day of Democracy provided an opportunity to reflect on the state of democracy. A reflection made all the more critical by the COVID-19 pandemic. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres concerned by the democratic clawbacks made in its name.
Yet, since the beginning of the crisis, we have seen the emergency used in a range of countries to restrict democratic processes and civic space. This is especially dangerous in places where democracy's roots are shallow and institutional checks and balances are weak.
So, how does Kenya measure up in that regard? Have Kenya's institutions shown themselves capable of safeguarding that balance of power?
Governors became so powerful, they used their power to acquire wealth, personal wealth, including in some cases wealth to their children. So the misuse of power is part of the problem that we have with democracy in this country.
The leaders equate democracy with the ability to provide people with jobs, ability to provide people with opportunities for business, sometimes illegally, because you cut the corners, you avoid the tender rules and so on. But the people themselves, they understand very well that when you go to a supermarket, you on this corner, you don't find these are Jubilee goons and they are cheaper, because Jubilee in power. And this side is NASA and they're expensive. They know the economy is one. They know they will suffer the same policies, the same taxation. They know all that.
Fairly democratic is Professor Naituli's assessment, given a judiciary that was independent enough to annul a presidential election.
Whatever we say, the rule of law is very strong in this country. We can't say the things soon descend in Tanzania or Rwanda or Uganda, you'll be in a lot of trouble. So there is only one part we have not gotten right: peaceful transfer of power after every election.
Professor Wanyande's assessment, on the other hand, is that Kenya has a very long way to go for the full realization of democracy. But given that they both agree that democracy is a process and not a destination, they prescribe the same thing as Guterres: the strengthening of institutions and vigilance. They say that speak to a man in a language he understands and it goes to his head. Speak to a man in his own language and it goes to his heart. While that is meant to be a positive, it has been exploited in the Kenya situation, as Zainab Ismail now explains.